G'day people, Carlos here, bringing you another episode of What's Up in Archaeology for the 26th of June 2017. Today I have two articles which I am going to read and discuss. One of them deals with hominins being prey. Hominins, I'm talking about Homo, our species, Neanderthals, Homo erectus. Well, I've talked about this before, but I'm presenting here now some concrete articles, concrete studies that have been carried out in Spain. As usual, I provide the actual study, which I will link to, and the other article I'm going to talk about is the first Americans. So, and how they got there. Well, not how they got there. A recent study has been published, and it shows that it took so long to actually get to America, to the American mainland, well, America, in fact, that the peoples that occupied, moved into the landmass that we call the Americas, actually evolved in certain ways, and I will be presenting that. So hello everyone, hope I don't bore you to tears. Let's get on with our first article. I'll just before I do that, I'll make it big, and I'm going to share now. Oh, before I do that, by the way, today I'm drinking I usually drink when I do these shows because it helps me relax. It hydrates me, and you know, you gotta wet your whistle. And today I'm having a local craft beer called Maldita, which translates to damned, and it's a robust porter. It is very nice indeed. So let us share the screen and make everyone. Oh, my mouse is acting up again. Okay, let's get on with it. By the way, can you all hear me well? By the way, Mitch, Connor, Todd, Coward, that's the ones I'm seeing now that have actually commented on. I think you can hear me. I can always check my other computer, which yep, I'm going well. I'm transmitting well, true and well. Now, anyway, this comes from the Smithsonian Institute, the Smithsonian.com. The article is Ancient Carnivores Had a Taste for Neanderthal Meat. Hello, Carlos. Thank you, Todd. Carlos David, how are you, my friend? And your friends as well, Mitch and Todd. I don't know you guys as well as I know Carlos David. So anyway, let's get back to that. Oh, by the way, I apologize if I don't interact so much with the chat, because I will be concentrating on the article, and I wish I had this multitasked and that, and so yeah, let's start. Ancient carnivores had a taste for Neanderthal meat. I love Neanderthals. Everyone who's seen my videos on archaeology, and not just on archaeology, I love the Neanderthals. They have been historically given a bad rap. And hello, Sandre Vercingetorix. God, I can't spell French Celtic names. But anyway, and Aldito Hernandez, thank you, man, for coming on from. I hope you enjoy your stay, and I hope I might not entertain you guys, but at least I I will try and present as much facts as I can. But anyway, I love Neanderthals, and this study from the comes from the Spanish, some archaeological. It's from the EPHES. I've linked to the actual. Well, I'll link to the actual IPHES site and the actual study. It's in the description. Please read them. They are interesting reads, and they are very, very interesting reads. I've read them, of course, and I've read this one, not like last week's podcast, the stream, which I did not read as I should have. But this one I've read, and it's quite interesting. Well, let's get started. Neanderthal hunters may themselves have been prey to big cats and other carnivores. According to a recent study, some punctures on the Neanderthal fossils are likely bite marks from large carnivore attacks. Now, the study from the IPHES shows that they indeed were, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Now, scientists know that the average Neanderthal ate, how they hunted, who they mated with, and how they divvied up chores. Yes, we do that. If you click on these links, you will get to the actual evidence and prints, studies, etc. That articles that will lead you to the studies that have been shown. So what they are asserting here has facts behind them. Just so you know, I never. This is not backed up by studies or facts for the new people that are joining me for the first time. And to some degree, where they cross paths with large carnivores. Evidence from archaeological and paleontological sites indicates that Neanderthals scavenged the leftovers of big carnivores. They hunted them and even competed with them for some cave shelters. Now, I'm going to provide a little bit of a background that is also in the studies. They also do the background. Now, this will take us back to about 4 million years back, when the first Australopithecines started to actually scavenge remains of carcasses left behind by predators. Apex predators: lions, tigers, hyenas, not jaguars, leopards, cheetahs. Yeah, that's the main. I think I've listed all the main predators in. And the hunting the dogs themselves, and wolves, etc. Dogs in Africa. They can't remember the old name was the Cape hunting dog, or something like that. I don't know the technical name. I apologize. I will look it up. But that's not important. What is important is that Australopithecines, probably our direct line of our direct lineage that we have that Homo, our genus, evolved from. Species. I might have gotten that wrong. That's not genus. Anyway, never mind. Before I frighten everyone away, they would scavenge the remains of the carcasses left behind by the big carnivores, and that's how evolution sort of kicked in, made our brains bigger, because we had which I will talk about in another stream. But they were also falling prey to those same carnivores. We don't see Lucy, the famous Australopithecine afarensis, was not killed by a carnivore, but we do have other fossils of other hominins that absolutely show that they were killed by carnivores. And this study, it focuses on the Neanderthals. As you can see from the picture, you can see here where it's highlighted two marks. This is the skull of a girl, a Neanderthal child. Oh no, it's not a girl, it's a Neanderthal child. I'm sorry. I misread the, well, I just didn't bother to read this part here because I was concentrated on the actual study. But it was a Neanderthal child. You can see the two puncture marks, which were most likely done by a carnivore, a cat most likely. What it says here is that the team from the Spanish researchers from the IPHES of Spain, they used modern cases of carnivore attacks on humans to see if the bite marks on the Neanderthal bones were spore similarities. And now they looked at 124 recent cases of attacks from lions, tigers, bears, leopards, and other carnivores on modern humans. A recent, I can't remember how recent they did, but about 10 years, 20 years. You get a lot of attacks in Africa. I mean, in India, tigers. It's not an epidemic, but it's a hell of a lot of attacks there. There's Tanzania apparently has a lot of attacks by lions. Lions are becoming a bit more emboldened. Bears, we have the case. I'll just reduce this because I have linked to one famous American. I think everyone knows this guy, Timothy Treadwell. He's the famous grizzly man or grizzly person or whatever, who was mauled to death in 2003 in Alaska by a grizzly bear. The grizzly man, yes. So this is one example of how even today, even in modern times, we are attacked by carnivores if we go into their environments and so on. Oh, hello, irate bear, my friend. And guys, I have to. I do a lot. The new people, I do this a lot. I sometimes look into the stream and see someone familiar, and I acknowledge them. I acknowledge everyone, in fact. So it gives me an excuse to have a drink. So let's get back to what's important. The article. I'll keep it like this. So they found that from the 124 recent cases of attacks by carnivores, they found similarities in the marked bones of the fossil record during the Pleistocene. That is between 40,000 years and 200,000 years ago. That is the European Neanderthals. But Neanderthals go back a bit further than that. But that's in that site, in the area which they studied in Spain. That's what they found. And now the group posited that the bite marks could have been the result of carnivore attack. Yes, however, it's unclear how these attacks might have occurred. Obviously, we don't know. They don't know. We don't know. Archaeology at the moment doesn't know if there was a random attack. This child was attacked. We don't. Outside of for example, I think this was found in a cave, so most likely she was the child was buried. So we don't know if the attack occurred inside the cave, outside the cave, or some way off the cave. We don't know, but it was attacked by a large feline, probably a carnivore, most likely the cave lion, or there weren't many saber-tooth cats in Europe. There were more in the Americas, so most likely it would have been either a cave lion. I'm gathering that, but because the teeth marks are very similar to what we have today. And it says in one case they pinpointed the carnivorous perpetrator. The puncture marks in the skull of a Neanderthal child unearthed in a cave in Valencia, Spain, which resembled those of modern big cat attacks. Now, that area, Valencia of Spain, is quite south in the southern part of the Iberian Peninsula. So most likely would have been just probably a normal lion, due to the size of the puncture marks that you can guys see here. Oh, come on, my mouse is not working well. That's the left side is the actual head, the top part of the skull. The other side is the reverse. So just so you know. This is the study that I was telling you guys about, the large carnivores attacks. You guys can download this. This is free. Just so you know that I provide the actual sources. And the IPHES stands for Institut Català de Paleoecologia Humana e Evolução Social. Translates to the Catalan Institute of Human Paleoecology and Social Evolution. Yes. Social evolution. Well, it is dealing with human societies, which the Neanderthals did participate in human societies. Now that yeah, so studies like this is not just for studying the past. We can apply these today. This can be used for forensic analysis because we can use modern examples to infer backwards, but we can also use ancient examples to see how they compare today. Where we can see the puncture marks of, say, a lion on a bone, and we can compare it to a lion on a bone today, and we can see the similarities. So if an example, they find a carcass, a human body, which basically just the bones are left, a modern example, and they see how the bones have been scattered. That's one example, because feeding carnivores, how they feed, how they dismember the body, is very, very characteristic. And then they can use that. They've done studies on how for example, lions dismember carcasses of game, of what they eat, for example, a wildebeest. So when they find in the past wildebeest in Africa, obviously, the bones scattered in a certain way, they know that that would have been most likely a lion kill. But if bones are missing, then you can add the second and third layer of scavenging. The second layer of scavenging would be probably the vultures, etc. The scavenging birds. Then you have the third layer, which in most likely modern times would be the smaller scavengers. But in the past, we could have substituted I'm saying 4 to 3 million years ago, we could have substituted the scavenging vultures and etc. with hominins, for example. One of our earliest ancestors fulfilled that niche. And so when we understand how Neanderthals interact with big cats and the contemporary predators and other contemporary predators, could perhaps inform how we share our own environment with large wildlife. The conflict between humans and large carnivores has a present and a constant throughout human evolution. I've said this now and before, and during even to modern times. The research is right. Though modern humans outcompeted Neanderthals, that's still up for debate. For resources, this is up for debate. We don't know. This is their conclusion. It's as valid as most conclusions are until evidence presented appears that contradicts it or clarifies this. It says that they say that it is also possible that the carnivore threat exacerbated their demise, they argue. That means that the Neanderthals were more prone to being killed by large carnivores, which this is now my opinion from interpreting the what I read from the actual study. The conclusion is just an assertion, a hypothesis, an idea. It's as valid at the moment as every other idea, as I said. Saying that modern humans outcompeted Neanderthals for resources, or that we mated with them to extinction, and there's a whole lot of things that we don't really know. There's also the disease factor that I'd covered sometimes back, one or two streams back. But now, this article concludes, given that Neanderthals lived amid these predators, so did modern humans, so did every other ancestor before them. Perhaps it's not surprising that some of the hominins met their end with the jaws of ferocious animals. It's still happening, so it's nothing new, nothing extraordinary. We are still killed. I'll just link to some Wikipedia articles. They're good for lists. First one. The list of fatal cougar attacks in North America. This is modern. So, between 1890 and 2011, at least 20 people died in North America from cougar attacks, including 6 in California. And more than 2/3 of the Californian fatalities occurred in Vancouver Island. People, stay away from that island. Cougars will kill you. Joking. Of course not. And so on. But this says that fatal cougar attacks are extremely rare and occur much less frequently than fatal snake bites, fatal lightning strikes, and even fatal bee stings. Well, citation needed. I love this. Citation needed. This is Chrissy Winter's favorite quote. But anyway, it's not unheard of. 20 people is not 0 people. And yes, it says here children are particularly vulnerable because they are small. A cougar, all carnivorous animals, carnivorous predators usually attack. They usually it's not way up is not the word. They usually evaluate between the weakest and the possibly the most calorific intake. Well, in this case, these cougars would not kill a human for the flesh. It would most likely be what wild animals do, defense probably, unless they're very, very, very hungry. So yeah, and so we see here modern times cougars have been killing humans in North America. Then there's the other one. Yeah, this one's in death due to lions, and there's a few. You got tiger attacks in India. In India, they're very common. Because actually the tigers in India, in some areas of India, they actually increase in population. and in other areas they are obviously slowing. Then they have here the San Francisco zoo tiger attacks. Idiots that go into enclosures that contain these majestic animals and become dicks. So yes, humans have been killed by by carnivorous animals, carnivorous, both cats, dogs, cats, I mean lions, tigers, etc., dogs, the cave huntings, hyenas, bears, etc., since we've even before, since the beginning, since primates. So it's an ongoing thing. Anyway, a pause between the next article. Say hello to some people here. Let's see who's here. Gaius Julius Caesar. Hail, Caesar, my friend. Hello, Leaky Monkey, my mate. Wikipedia, good to have you on, mate. I hope I'm not boring the shit out of you guys. It's been really. There are weeks like this that I can't find enough material, and the actual article on the Neanderthals being killed by carnivorous predators. It looks okay. It is okay. Just carrying on from another stream I did some time ago that talked about the predation of the Australopithecines and the early Homo species, Homo habilis, Homo erectus, because there's Homo erectus when they evolved most likely from Homo habilis. The thing about archaeology is we are discovering new things, new data, new fossils every day. So at the moment, I will say most likely. It's not definitively. Nothing's definitively in science. There's always new discoveries that contradict the old ones. But that's just the most marvelous thing about science. So yeah, having another drink. Now let's get on to the next one. American the first Americans, I should say. I'm going to share again the screen. And we have here from the bioinformatics, it's a publishing, obviously, science publishing magazine. It's Barcelona. Catalans are quite advanced in human evolutionary science, which is a good thing. And I follow a few publications. This one, in Spain, the Atapuerca Foundation, which deals with Atapuerca, which is a Homo ancestor site. Homo ancestor most likely is Homo heidelbergensis, which Homo sapiens sapiens, Homo sapiens neanderthalensis, and Homo sapiens denisovians, and a fourth mysterious human evolved from. This is not settled, but it's most likely. Again, most likely, it will be settled as we find new data. But anyway, and I also follow the Nutcracker Man. It's a newsletter on archaeology. who's run by Roberto Sainz. He loves Neanderthals. I think he loves Neanderthals as much as I do. So that's about going for it. Now let's start with this article. I better show what I was originally going to show, just so you guys can see the map. It is this one. This is Beringia. We will see in a second. Beringia was the land connection between Eurasia and the Americas during the last glacial maximum, which ended about 12,000 BC, 12,000 years ago, 10,000 to 12,000 BC. Humans, because of the certain climatic climatic conditions in this area, this had allowed humans to live there as they do with the Inuit, you can call them the Eskimos, and the people that live in Siberia. So it would have been the conditions would have been very similar to what Siberia is today. There would have been a whole host. It's a landmass. You can see everything that is not blue is land, with the differences between the heights. So this article shows that the Bering Land Bridge plays a central role in our picture of how humans reached the Americas. When much of the world's water was locked up in ice and the land between Asia and North America was exposed, people followed the bridge to migrate to Asia, into Alaska, and from there to the rest of the Americas. Just a little bit of a note: there's 3 different theories, hypotheses on how the peoples that lived here or in Asia ended up in America. There was a huge ice sheet covering most of Alaska, almost all of Canada, and a lot of the Americas, a lot of the United States. But there were also corridors which were green due to the local climatic conditions that did not contain the glaciation during all the year, or snow or whatever during all of the year. So one of them was through the coast. Another one was there was a corridor between the coast and the actual massive ice sheets what it goes from Canada to Washington down to Oregon, more or less that area. Another one was that they highland hopped through the islands that the Alaskan, we can see from the map here, the Alaskan pen, where they island hopped, and along the coast, the Northmost took a direct route down to the southern parts of say Northern California, etc., just outside of the reach of the glaciation. So just a bit of an explanation of what you can see. But now these taking account that the people living in the area that we call Beringia, right? So the picture tends to portray that the bridge was purely a route to a new continent. In fact, the word bridge definitely conjures up the wrong images, obviously. It was a geographic region often called Beringia, and the people living there lived there for so long that they probably had been ludicrous for them that we could think of their home as transient. So the earliest let's call it colonizers of the Americas, they just lingered on in Beringia because it was just so good. Remembering that most of Alaska was covered under an ice sheet, up to, for the Americans, 1.5 miles, for the metric system, 2 kilometers and a bit. I'm rounding off the estimates, so don't be too too rigorous, because I'll be rigorous when I have to, and I'll be flexible when I don't have to. Anyway, so estimates suggest that the people living there lived there between 5,000 and 8,000 years, starting from around 23,000 years ago. Just to give you guys that don't know perspective, 8,000 years longer than the first cities in the developed in the world. The first cities in the world are younger than 8,000 years. They would have been about, yeah, give or take a few hundred years. Ur was about 6,400 BC, 7,000 to close to 8,000 before the modern time. So this is contemporary. You just have to see the time is long. This is a huge amount of time, but it looks small. But it is small. It is small, but it's also huge. This gave rise, there was enough time for natural selection to have had an effect on the genome of the people who lived there. And according to the paper of the, I have it here, Proceedings of the National Academy of Science of the United States. Unfortunately, they put a lot of their studies behind a paywall. I have here the abstract. I wish I could get the full study, because the full paper, because it is just awesome. From the abstract and some of the it just, wow. I am disappointed, but anyway. I'll keep reading this one instead of the Barcelona one, because this one's cool enough. So the Beringians, which we call those people that live there, would have faced distinctive diseases, which is obvious. Food constraints, yes. Climate conditions and natural selection that would have helped those with the right genetic adaptations to thrive in the environment. That is all. That is, yes. Nothing to say there. I can't add anything else. Absolutely. If you live long enough in a harsh environment, and don't, what we have now is different. Then natural selection was evident. It was the fittest would have survived to reproduce, etc. So according to this new paper, we can see evidence of the natural selection in modern Native American populations. What is the evidence? Well, a recent genetics survey, if you click on this, it's a link, it gets you to a link, you see, of 191 Greenlandic Inuit people, found that some genetic patterns that are so common that their best explanation for them is natural selection. Specifically, there's evidence to suggest that 3 genes involved in the metabolizing of fatty acids, called the fatty acids desaturasas, or the FADs, let's call them FADs, the genes, that show changes that might have resulted in the adaptation of a diet high in protein and fats. This is the sort of the diet trends that to be one of the side effects of living in the Arctic. Where do we see this high protein and fatty diet? Where do we see this? We see this in the Arctic Circle. We see this in the Inuit. We see this in the people that are basically most like probably from the Laplanders, which farm the reindeers. They don't have traditionally they didn't have any vegetable and crops, and except for the few natural occurring vegetable foodstuffs which are edible in that area. We have that in the Siberians, people living in Siberia, northern Siberia, in Russia, etc. They have a high meat, low high meat diet, fats, principally fat, because fat is one of the most powerful, most energy power components of all the tissues. Meat is basically pure meat is basically protein, but it doesn't provide a lot of energy. Where fats and carbohydrates, that's why fats and carbohydrates make you fat, but you can die of starvation if you just eat protein. Now, the people living in the Arctic Circle basically just eat meat and fat. So, of course, this gene needs to have been more prevalent, so they wouldn't affect their health in any adverse ways. And that's what's my interpretation of what I read. These conditions aren't particular to Greenland, right? These conditions, eating meat and so on, and they were probably similar in Beringia. It is possible that the adaptations took place in Beringia itself. This is possible evidence that the people living in the especially in the Western Hemisphere, let's say the Americas and Greenland, the Inuits, they particularly hold these genes, unlike the Eurasian people, because of course they would have had some remnants. They would have evolved those genes from their ancestors living there. If I care to speculate, this is my speculation. It is not a fact. It is my speculation, due to the fact that the Denisovians have given the Tibetans certain adaptations to, for example, high altitude and high altitude environments. I hope I'm vindicated one day. I'm not. I will not be vindicated, by the way. This is totally not. I will never be vindicated by this. But it stands on record that I really would love to see that this adaptation came from the Denisovians, the high altitude adaptations, and the FADS gene that helped them to metabolize. Help them to be healthy with just a high protein and fat diet instead of with plants, etc. So let's continue. To test this hypothesis, the group of researchers compared the genomes of Native Americans to people in Africa, Europe, and Eastern Asia. You see it better. And in line with earlier evidence, they found the variants of the FADS genes that were much more common in the Native American genomes. If this is true, even though the diets among Native American populations became quite diverse after the fact, over their history. So even as they moved into Southern America, most likely they still retain those genes, the FADS genes. There's a growing pile of evidence that the FADS genes are pretty important, says Rasmus Nielsen, who wasn't involved with this paper, but was one of the authors, of the paper about the Greenlandic Inuit genomes. The same gene seems to show signs of natural selection in a lot of different human populations, and it all seems to have something to do with the histories of what the populations may have eaten. Oh, I just added the may. These are genes that seem to be really, really important when the diets change, he says. Obviously, if you come from I'm just looking at the chat. Hello, Modwayne. Hello, Malefice. Oh God, I made this channel as it's pure science. I don't know how the hell I can trigger YouTube anymore. You should click on the little bell, maybe. I'm sorry, man. I don't know. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Modway. Hey, Bam Bam, how are you? Now, another drink because I was getting thirsty. Where was I? Of course, as I was about to say, yes, of course, diets change as you move into different environments. Given enough time, you can go from a tropical-based diet. Tropical, I mean fruits, nuts, some meat, a lot of tubers, etc. That is tropical. That's what's happening in many tropical areas. To go up to the temperate areas, we have a lot of grains. You can also have nuts. You also have fruits, but you have more meat into the diet. Then, if you go even further up into up in the hemispheres, where you get less vegetable matter, but you can get a lot depending on the areas. If it's a forested area, you can get a lot of some nuts, some fruits, a lot of funguses, mushrooms, and etc. More meat than usual. And then when you get to the top of the Arctic Circle, where you have lichen, some berries, some nuts, very few nuts. There are some pines that can survive in the absolute north and north of the Arctic Circle. Look at Lapland, Norway, Russia, even Alaska and Canada, and you have fatty game, and I mean fatty game would be seals, whales, and caribou. And during this period, you had some of the megafauna, Megasaurus, bison, in the Americas, horses, etc. Beringia wouldn't have been any different. So that's how that changes. Of course, you'd see the genes evolve, become more prevalent as the ones that had the people that the individuals that lacked those genes may have not have reproduced, while the individuals that did have those genes would have reinforced those genes by reproducing. Works, by the way, people. So then you have here the founder effect. One tricky thing is that natural selection isn't the only thing that brings about differences between genomes. Of course, yes. Yes, absolutely. When you have a large populations of people, they have quite a bit of variation in their genomes. For instance, the population might have some people with brown eyes, some with green, some with blue. This is explaining how natural selection works. It's a natural selection 101, by the way. If a small group of people breaks away and moves off, they only take part of the total variation with them. Because of random chance, 80% of that group of migrants might have brown eyes. If their descendants tend to have brown eyes, that does selection made it that way. See, that's the caveat. That's why I explained before that the gene, the FADS gene, may, oh God, I hope they find that, come from some other place, have developed during our evolution, and from living in northern hemispheres, in hemispheres that are very few plant materials and quite a lot of fatty animals to hunt and eat. So, if the Native American genomes tend to show that a lot of differences on the FADS genes, it is important to check that the results isn't because of the founder effect. I have a link in the description which I put on every one of my streams. It's called the scientific method. It is basically aimed at 10 and 11-year-olds from an old Australian program which was called Curiosity Show. I grew up with that. I learned my reasoning, my science, my skepticism, my questioning, my objectivity, my inquisitiveness, my inquiry because of them. They were the best. We don't have that anymore, and I am sad because we don't have programs like that anymore. I digress. So yes, founder effect. When the researchers did this, they found that the number of variants. So if Native American genomes tend to show a lot of differences in the FADS genes, it is important to check the results in the founder. Testing this means looking at the rest of the genome, estimating how strong the founder effect is, and seeing whether the variants in questions are more common than you would expect based on the founder effect. This is important, the founder effect. When archaeologists study areas where hominins moved into, and the variations, etc., they have to look at this. So researchers when the researchers did this, they found that the number of variants were more common enough that the natural selection seems to be the best explanation. So they found that the founder effect did not have a substantial influence in the population that became the Native Americans. Let me explain this. There was enough of the original colonizers that had enough of the mixture of all the genes, particularly the FADS genes, that they could discount that there was just a small group that had that particular genes in them. Like, for example, what they gave the example of the brown eyes. So they found that the natural selection, there was active natural selection in Beringia. So the Beringians was inhabited by a population, not individuals. This is we must and I must emphasize this. It is archaeologists work with populations, not individuals. We can infer from the genetic material that we gather from the fossils, which are individuals, but we try to not extrapolate too far. We want to get as many individuals as possible from an area to make a population. So as you might imagine, not all of the Native American genomes were uniform in terms of the FADS variants that they had. Some regions showed more of the variants and some showed less. The high frequencies occur despite marked differences in lifestyles and diets of the different indigenous populations. So they basically sampled all of the indigenous American population, Americans, the natives. They are Amerindians, by the way. And they found that not all of these these individual populations expressed the FADS genes equally. And then they concluded that there hasn't been a huge amount of time for that. However, there's to operate. Further studies could test whether there is a difference among Native American groups that could be connected with the historical diets. So that'll come next. So in concluding, there is evidence, if the evidence keeps piling up that the FADS genes affect how we process food, they could ultimately be important in medical research, Nielsen said. There is so much debate about whether diet is mostly healthy, he says. But we could be looking at the reason why that question doesn't have a simple answer. The best diet might be different for different people depending on genetics. Yes, you cannot, if you give, let's say, a Mediterranean person just pure fat and let's broaden this. This is a bit of generalization. I'm going to do a little bit of generalizations. I try never to do that, but let's, just for the sake of an argument, a little thought experiment, that we generalize a population. If you give a European a diet, a modern European, a diet of just fat and protein, meat, just meat basically, he will be completely fucked up because his genetics are not geared for that. Inversely, if we give an Inuit, for those racist, bigoted, old-fashioned people, the Eskimos are the Inuit, by the way. It's Inuit. If you give them a pure vegetable diet, their genetics will also fuck them up. They won't be able to process the food that way. Their genetics are, their genes are tuned for the diet of their local area. Of course, there is variations, as the study shows, but as you can see, the medical research which he's implying is that some diets are better than others, and apparently, I don't want to. There's a saying in Portuguese that bring the sardine closer to the coals. It basically means promoting your area, but I'm talking about the Mediterranean diet, which does not absolutely just include Portugal, of course. It includes all of the Mediterranean area, north and south, apparently, and the Japanese diet, and there's also an area in Eastern Asia, somewhere between Afghanistan, Tibet, China, Russia, etc. There's an area there where they also have a diet which is these three areas, general areas, are so far considered to be the dietary components you could eat, because it contains all the elements of the supposed, the food pyramid. A lot of fish, balance the meat, etc. But that's good for us because most of the world, especially the Western world, the Europeans basically, and some other area people that have agricultural farming, mostly farming, not pastoralizing, pastoral societies, which are mostly predominant in the north of and some in Africa, but it's just a bit generalizing. Diet affects human development. Absolutely, that's what this guy says. And just before I go, I finished the articles, by the way. Please read the links I've provided. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 links as sources for what I've talked about today. First Americans, unfortunately, the two studies are behind paywalls. God, I hate that. And that basically means that I would like you to read them, and also the scientific method for beginners. I love that. So anyway, let's have a look at what the chat says. And hello, people. John the Bemused. Yes, I do have a friend, a lady friend in New Zealand. Her name is Emma, and no, I do know Michael Rollins and Garrett, what's his name? The idiot. But Emma is not an SJW. She's a great friend of mine. She's reasonable, and she's in my heart, for example. What else? Can I ask how did you guys how did I rate me, please, while I can see the chat? No, she's not an archaeologist. No, Keanu. She's just a friend of mine. She's I don't know what she does. Basically, she does videos. I follow her and so on. I've followed her for a long time. She's a really good friend of mine. I've had her. I've talked to. I have a video where I talk with her and her husband on basically. It's almost a Q&A question. She asked me questions. I responded basically. Okay. Hey, Malefice. I'd like to let you know I'm using your links as sources for my studies. Yes, use the sources, man. You will not. Yes, you will not be. I can guarantee you will not be disappointed. Neutral on that. These are neutral sources, and I try to get the best sources and studies, etc. Oh man, thank you for that. I am really humbled, man. Thank you, Chantel, for rating my channel. What else? Let me see something here. I should go back up. Oh, John W. I just saw this John W. Muse. The problem with eugenics. No, eugenics is pseudoscience, man. I don't. That's just I dismiss that totally. Yeah. You know. Oh no. Damned. Well, she's not. She's not SJW, but totally no. She's reasonable. Trust me, she is very, very reasonable. John the Bemused. Emma is very Emma. God, what's her name? Oh, I'm being. I am so shit at names. I'll look her up. I know I follow Emma. Emma Gorofsky. That's her name. She is not an SJWE person. She's reasonable. She can accept both sides of an argument. She's not. Sort of like me in many ways. Uh, that's a second one. Uh, I know what. Much easier. I look into my where I had her in my stream, because that's much easier. Let's see. Here we go. Wrong one. But yeah, yes, Modwan, it is history. Yes, but it's totally pseudoscience. We can't at this the human genome is just so complex that we can't create the quote unquote perfect human. In fact, perfect humans. We are transitional forms. Um, so no, we can't. Well, no, not eugenics isn't being studied. Genetics is being studied, and I'm not uncomfortable if they do serious studies on how genetics affects IQ, and we get a sample of the whole Earth, equal, balanced, objective samples. That is science. It's not not like what they actually practiced in the 20s and 30s and 40s, etc. Well, up to the 30s, that's when eugenics was really at its peak. Then it just tapered off because biology just went away, went ahead. So so yeah, I don't see intelligence very linked with genetics, or let's say it race. I know that there is no human. We at the moment are one race. I've said this in many of my streams, and I will continue to say it again. Oh, I'm sharing this. I better not share. Stop presenting. That's better. Yeah, I'm just sharing my Twitter. Sorry about that, guys. We just need a representative sample, Malefice, of all the people on Earth. It's not hard to do. And in fact, we have sort of done it with the genome project of that National Geographic did a couple of 2 decades ago when I presented my DNA for analysis. They got enough of the whole human population, the sample of the whole human population, to basically for making it valid and a valid sample. So it's not 1% of Earth, but it's say 3% of individual populations. There was just enough people that sent in their DNA that they could actually get a valid study, a valid sample size. Yes, Modwan, yes. Genetics can exactly eugenics can't or couldn't show anything. Genetics can. Eugenics is more of an excuse to claim differences between ethnicities. Yes, 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 yes. I can't add more than that. Representative sample, yes. It was a representative sample. You just need. I'm not good at statistics, so I won't even give you. I won't even try to uh, to give you what is a representative sample. But the National Geographic's Genome Project was a representative sample of the world. We are using it to compare our differences between us and Neanderthals, etc., etc. Wikipedia snippet. So let's see how long. I got 5 more minutes. I'm closing in 5 more minutes. So so let's try and end on a high note. This, like I said in the beginning, this week was a bit of a sort of a disappointing publication period. I didn't bring any special guest, but I will promise myself. I won't promise you guys because I will not disappoint you if I fail. I will only disappoint myself. I will try and get a relevant special guest in the near future. That's all I can do. I find it difficult as hell to introduce myself to people. I would love to have a talk with so many people in my field, or have enough information or have enough interest to know my field. I know of a few popular YouTubers and so on that love archaeology and prehistory, and that I have not gotten them on because of scheduling, and I hate being pushy. And when I ask them once and they say they give an excuse, I accept it and I don't ask them again. That is my problem, and I can't fix that. I hope they one day listen to this, and when I say, do you want to come talk to me about this, and they will come on. Yes, Sargon, I owe him a lot. He is he has helped me grow more than anyone, and I owe him a lot. But doesn't mean that I can't criticize him. I will criticize the fuck out of him when he published that stupid piece he did on the Greco-Pithecus hominin that they found in Europe, that everyone and the dog was claiming our direct ancestor, which is not. I have criticized him, and I criticize him even now. That's why I got him on about the We Were Kangs episode about the Egyptian genomic genomic reading. I got him on because I knew he was going to do some shitty archaeology, and I said, come on, let's talk about it better, because it's stuff like that. Yeah, it is just no, he didn't talk about that. He hasn't talked about. Give me the link. Do you have my Twitter? Is I'll type it here. My Twitter for everyone that wants to know. It's so yes, that is my Twitter. The same as this channel. It's easy. He has. I don't think he has talked about Göbekli Tepe. Göbekli Tepe is a pre-pottery Neolithic temple construction. It is not something that is out of extraordinary. I've sort of mentioned it in a few of my other tweets, my other programs, and I'll repeat it again. Göbekli Tepe is probably the first itineration of what would come later, that continued to come later. There is no stop. There is no how do I say, gap. It is a small continuation. It took 2,000 years to build an area that is what it's not. It's about the size, a little bit. Buckingham Palace and maybe its gardens. No, or Hyde Park in London. It's smaller than Hyde Park in London, I think. I will do something. I have to do something about it, but it is not extraordinary. 2,000 years to build something is a hell of a long time in human quote unquote history, because this was prehistory. History is writing. So it took time. It took us 2,000 years to fly, to actually go to the moon. Yes, we did go to the moon. There's don't no one go there. We did go to the moon. We are exploring Jupiter. We went to Pluto with a probe, with a robot that is will continue to bring back data from the Kuiper Belt and so on. So yeah. So there was someone there that I have to give. Where is he? Oh, I know. Let's go back. And he left, the cunt. But yeah. There is. There we go. I'm a good person. I'm better than many people. I am better than. I'm a bit drunk, by the way, guys. So I think I'll end it here. We've established what I wanted to say. I hope you enjoyed this channel. Oh, John the Bemused. Yes, Douglas Adams. I love that. Yes. You quoted the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. You are an awesome person, mate. Yes. Anyone who I know the references, God damn it. Is it water tree? Water tree. Is it relevant that the Egyptians no, Atlantis is in the mythology is simple. Homer wrote an extraordinary poem. He mentioned Atlantis. It is what, 3 lines, if I'm not mistaken. And the island is Santorini in the Mediterranean, the Aegean. That island has a particularity, which was a forward trading, or a really advanced city state, you could call it. Well, a city that was maybe a part of the Minoan Empire. This was the Bronze Age of the Aegean. You had the Mycenaeans, the Minoans, and the Hittites, the Egyptians, the Sumerians, or was it the Babylonians? But anyway, the Mesopotamian empires. So Santorini is an island, a volcanic island, and I don't, out of my head, know when it exploded, but the explosion of that island left the remaining about what left was a third of the total area, a humongous, get the pun, huge crater, and the pyroclastic flow, that's that hot lava, ash, fire and shit that happens, traveled across a large expanse of ocean, and basically destroyed Crete, the Cretan Empire, the Cretan civilization, which were the Minoans. So that is, yes, John, you got it, John W. Muse. Exactly. I took a bit of time to explain the whole event, but yes, it did. It that is where Atlantis comes from. Yeah, well, I know. It's near. I know the sunken Egyptian cities near Alexandria area. It's in the Nile Delta area and so on. I will try. I'm not as good in that is history, by the way. I'm not as good as a historian as I am of a pre Neolithic. Well, basically, I'm prehistorian. I'm my area is the Paleolithic period, not the Neolithic. So thank you, Archaeology. Yes, it was around 1600 BC. Yes. The Bronze Age, the end of the Bronze Age of the Aegean, well, the end of the Bronze Age period, basically. When the Bronze Age crisis came about, the sea people, etc. So yes, I have to look at that Archaeology. Thank you for reminding me. I will look at it, man. So anyway, people, I have to get up. Well, I'm gonna do a little bit of shit before I go, but I think my stream has come to an end, and I am, as usual, honored to have you on, and I hope I have been informative enough. Until next Monday. So thank you, and just one sec, I have to, oh God. See you next week then. Bye-bye.